You're signing the paperwork, mortgage, student loans, credit card application. You think this is progress, but this exact moment, this dependency, has been engineered the same way for 800 years. Different documents, same architecture, a 7-stage process designed to move you from independence to control. And the system is built so you never escape it. Many people watching this are already deep in stage 5 or 6. This isn't ancient history, it's your mortgage payment, your credit score, your career path that requires credentials you had to borrow to obtain. We're going to map this pattern from medieval fields to modern debt, not to depress you, to show you the cage so you can see the bars. Stage 1, dependency creation, the first hook. The pattern starts with a simple move. Create a relationship where someone else controls access to something you need to survive or advance. The mechanism is elegant. Present the dependency as a solution, not a trap. Make it seem like the only rational choice. The offer comes wrapped in protection, opportunity, or necessity. Medieval Europe, after Rome collapsed, the Lord's pitch was straightforward. I have land, soldiers, and walls. You have nothing but your labor and your family's hunger. Work my fields, and I'll keep the raiders away. Refuse, and you're on your own when the next warband comes through. That wasn't coercion in the obvious sense. It was a transaction. But once you accepted, the terms shifted. The modern parallel runs through everything we're told is mandatory for a stable life. Home ownership isn't just a preference. It's sold as the only path to building wealth. Renting is throwing money away. The cultural message is relentless. If you don't own property, you're failing at adulthood. College degrees work the same way. The narrative says a 4-year credential is the sole ticket to a dignified livelihood. Skilled trades, apprenticeships, starting a business, those are presented as backup plans for people who couldn't make the real path work. The critical shift happens when self-sufficiency stops being an option. The peasant who worked his own plot, the craftsman who learned his trade through practice, they didn't need the Lord's land or the university's seal. But once those alternatives disappear or get stigmatized, you're funneled into the system. You need what they have. They know it. And now they control the terms. Stage 2. Eliminate alternatives. Closing the exits. Dependency alone isn't enough. The next move is more aggressive. Remove the alternatives. Make it impossible to meet the need outside the system. The Enclosure Acts in England were the clearest version of this. Common lands, fields where peasants could graze animals, gather firewood, grow food, were privatized, fenced off, legally transferred to landlords. The peasant who once supplemented his income suddenly had nothing. He couldn't feed his family without working for the landowner. This wasn't theft, it was legal, documented, justified as economic progress. Modern resource control follows the same template. The banking system monopolizes mortgages. You can't buy a home in most markets without their loan. The university accreditation system controls entire careers. Medicine, law, engineering require credentials only they can grant. The illusion of choice remains. You can pick your bank, your college, your mortgage product. But bypassing the system entirely? Impossible. Stage 3. Formalize the obligation, the legal lock. Once they've locked down the resource, the next move is to formalize their power. The relationship becomes a contract, a legal obligation that dictates your behavior for years or decades. In medieval Europe, this was the corvée, the legally mandated labor duty. A serf owed the lord a fixed number of days per week working his fields, not a suggestion, not negotiable. The law said you worked those days, and the Lord's court enforced it. Modern debt works identically. The 30-year mortgage isn't a suggestion, it's a promissory note, a legal contract that binds your income for 3 decades. The student loan agreement does the same thing for 10 to 20 years. These aren't loose commitments you can walk away from. Miss 3 mortgage payments and foreclosure proceedings begin. Default on federal student loans and the government can garnish your wages without a court order. The contract gives the creditor legal tools to extract payment even when your circumstances change. Job loss, medical emergency, economic collapse. Your hardship doesn't void their claim. The language sanitizes the arrangement. Servitude becomes amortization. Labor duty becomes debt service. Stage 4. Debt binding, the engine of perpetuity. A simple obligation can, in theory, be fulfilled. You work the required days, pay the agreed amount, and eventually you're free. But the next stage ensures that freedom never arrives. The obligation is structured to perpetuate itself. Here's how it works: compound interest, fees, and penalties. Mathematical tools designed to outpace your ability to pay down the principal. The debt doesn't shrink, it grows, or it shrinks so slowly that repayment becomes a lifetime project. The colonial company store was the clearest example. Workers in mining towns or plantations were paid in scrip. Company currency only valid at the company store. Prices at the store were inflated. Credit was extended for necessities. Interest accumulated. The worker's wages never quite covered what he owed. Every payday, the debt remained or increased. He couldn't leave. The law treated unpaid debt as a crime. He couldn't pay it off. The system was designed to prevent that. Modern mortgage amortization follows the same logic. In the first decade of a 30-year mortgage, almost every payment goes to interest. The principal barely moves. You're paying the bank for the privilege of owing them money. Student loans add another layer. On unsubsidized loans, interest capitalizes. Unpaid interest gets added to the principal. The balance grows even if you're making payments. Income-driven repayment plans stretch the timeline to 20 or 25 years, ensuring you're paying well into middle age for a degree you earned in your 20s. The system isn't optimized for your repayment, it's optimized for your continued obligation. The debt itself becomes the lender's income-producing asset. Your monthly payment is their revenue stream. They profit from the perpetuation, not the resolution. And as long as you're a debtor, you're not free. Stage 5. Exit prevention, building the walls. The system doesn't rely on you staying trapped by accident. It builds walls to prevent escape, legal, economic, and social barriers that make walking away nearly impossible. Medieval serfs couldn't leave the manor without the lord's permission. Try to flee, and you'd be hunted down and returned. The modern equivalent? Your credit score, a permanent mark following you for 7 years after default, blocking mortgages, rentals, car loans, and even employment. Strategic bankruptcy, legally discharging debt you can't pay, comes with a decade-long mark on your record. It's an option, but the penalty is severe enough to deter most people from using it. Professional licensing creates another layer. Borrowed heavily for medical school, law school, a PhD, that credential only has value in its specific lane. Pivoting becomes nearly impossible. The sunk cost is too high. Medical resident with $400,000 in loans. The debt only makes sense if she finishes the specialty, completes the licensing, and practices in the field. The credential has no value outside medicine. The debt structure itself eliminates the exit. These barriers work as long as you keep trying to play by the rules. But what happens when you stop paying? When you try to walk away from the obligation entirely? That's when the system moves from prevention to punishment. Stage 6. Deploy legal force, the final enforcement. The modern version sanitizes the violence, but the structure remains. Foreclosure is the clearest example. Miss enough mortgage payments, and the bank initiates a legal process to seize your home. A court order is issued. A sheriff's deputy oversees the eviction. Your possessions are removed. The house is sold. The process is procedural. Paperwork, court dates, certified mail. But the end result, losing your home, being physically removed from the property, remains a form of violence. It's just administered through legal channels instead of a knight's sword. Student loans add wage garnishment. The Department of Education can seize a portion of your paycheck without a court order. They can take your tax refund. They can garnish Social Security payments. The contract you signed isn't just an agreement. It's a tool that allows the creditor to invoke state power against you. The court, the sheriff, the garnishment order, they're all enforcement mechanisms for the obligation you entered when you needed access to the resource they controlled. Stage 7. Normalization, the story that hides the system. The final stage is the most powerful, making the entire arrangement seem natural, inevitable, or even virtuous. Medieval serfs were told their position was ordained by God. Modern debtors are told their obligations are the path to success. Modern narratives do the same work. Rent is throwing money away, so you need a mortgage. Student debt is an investment in yourself, so borrowing 6 figures for a degree is responsible planning. The American dream requires home ownership, so 30 years of payments is the path to stability. A good credit score means you're responsible, so managing debt well is a moral achievement. Next time someone says rent is throwing money away, ask them, compared to what? 30 years of interest payments, property taxes, maintenance? The phrase isn't financial advice. It's stage 7 doing its job. These aren't facts. They're stories the system tells to make you accept the terms. Rent isn't inherently wasteful. It's flexibility and freedom from maintenance costs and property risk. Debt isn't always an investment. It's often a gamble on a future income that may not materialize. Home ownership isn't the only path to wealth. It's one option among many, and it comes with decades of obligation. But the narratives are everywhere. Media, schools, financial advisors, family members. They all repeat the same scripts. The message is constant. This is how it's done. This is what success looks like. This is the responsible choice. The ultimate goal is internalization. You stop seeing the system as something imposed on you and start seeing it as the natural landscape of adult life. The mortgage, the student loans, the credit score, the career tied to the credential. They're not traps, they're milestones, responsibilities, the things you're supposed to have. When you fail within the system, when you can't make the payments, when the debt overwhelms you, when the career doesn't pay enough to service the loans, you see it as a personal failure, not a systemic flaw, not a predictable outcome of the pattern. Your failure, your poor planning, your lack of discipline. We look back at serfdom and see it as barbaric, but we miss the identical architecture in our own lives because the story we've been told is so compelling. The pattern becomes invisible from the inside. The complete pattern. 7 stages, 1 architecture. Stage 1, create dependency on a resource they control. Stage 2, eliminate alternatives so you can't meet the need elsewhere. Stage 3, formalize the obligation through legal contracts. Stage 4, structure the debt so it perpetuates itself. Stage 5, build walls that prevent escape. Stage 6, deploy legal force when you try to leave. Stage 7, tell a story that makes the whole arrangement seem natural. Medieval serfs bound to the manor, modern debtors bound to the mortgage, sharecroppers bound to the crop lien, students bound to the loan servicer. The pattern isn't about evil individuals, it's a systemic logic that emerges when control is profitable. When you hear, "This is just how it's done," you're hearing stage 7 in real time. Identify which stage you're in, question a dependency, build an asset outside the system, a skill, a side income, something that doesn't require permission or credentials. If you want to keep mapping these hidden architectures, subscribe, stay skeptical.